What's going on, my friends? Chris Peach here, episode 140 of the Money Peach podcast, Money Peach live show. Today, I'm excited. We've been doing a lot of research over here all about the new HEALS Act, which is the second round of stimulus checks and then some. Good news is you could definitely expect there's going to be more money coming your way in terms of when we're talking about the second round of stimulus checks. So what you can expect in this episode is we're going to break down what is the HEALS Act. We're going to talk about the CARES Act, how it compares to the HEROES Act, how it compares to the recently recently proposed HEALS Act, which we think is going to go in effect on August 7th. So it was just pushed out on Monday by the Senate. There's some information in there. We broke it down to make it easy to understand terms so you can expect, or you can understand what to expect. And so we're going to go through all of that. I mean, even if you're anything like me, you probably want to know, what does CARES, what does HEROES, and what does HEALS stand for? Don't worry, we're going to get there as well. So, but before we start, I just want to give you some good news before we jump into this. It looks like you're probably going to get a little bit more money. If you got any money from the first round of stimulus checks, you're probably going to get even more money this time, most likely. And I'll explain how that works. So let's just a little recap here. So in March, this pandemic was happening very, very quickly, and it was bipartisan. The CARES Act was passed. The CARES Act, if you remember, was the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Security Act. So both the Democrats and the Republicans came together. They pushed this thing out. It was $2.2 trillion. And if you remember, if you were single and you made between $75,000 and $99,000 a year on your taxes the year before, you got a check for $1,200, or it was phased out up to $99,000. It was double for a household. So it was up to $198,000. I think it was 150 to 198 was the phase out. If that was your adjusted gross income the year before for 2019, you got a check for $2,400, and then you got $500 per dependent. But that was the big hiccup. If you remember, there's a lot of people, and I agree with them, that were upset. There was this group of people that weren't included. And so the HEALS Act is going to address that. Back in the CARES Act, the group of people that weren't included, it was, remember, if you were age 16 or younger. So 17 and older didn't get anything. So if you had a dependent at your house and you filed them as a dependent, but they were age 17, 18, or 19, you didn't get the $500, right? So there's some changes that's going to be coming your way. And so that was really good too. And then the big thing for a lot of people with the CARES Act is it was an extra $600 per week unemployment added on to your unemployment check from your state. So here in Arizona, $208 is the maximum you can get for your state unemployment. So add $600. So you're getting like a little over $800 a week up until July 31st. That's when it expires. So that was there's a lot of other things inside the CARES Act, but that's how it affected us. So example, if you are a family making $130,000 a year and you had 2 children, you got a check for $3,400, $2,400 for filing married and being under that $150,000 threshold. And then you also got $500 per child if they were age 16 or younger. Good news is, if you got that money from the March CARES Act, you're probably going to get even more. You're either going to get the same or a little bit more on that aspect of it. Now, on the other side of it, the unemployment's definitely changed. We're going to be talking about that as well. So let's break down the HEALS Act versus CARES Act versus HEROES Act, okay? So HEALS Act's the one that was just talked about on Monday. Mitch McConnell put it out there, and it should hopefully get signed by next week, August 7th, okay? But before that, in May, we had the HEROES Act, okay? So the HEROES Act was the Health and Economic Recovery Omnibus Emergency Solutions Act, okay? So this was passed through mostly, I would say, on the Democratic side. And kind of keep in mind here, this podcast is not about politics, but we'll mention the word Democrat, Republican on where the bills come from. So keep in mind, the CARES Act, think of it as it was bipartisan. Both Democrats and Republicans agreed on it. The HEROES Act was very much on the left side, so it was very Democratic. And so with that, it was usually more expensive. On the Democratic side, usually are willing to spend a little bit more money. So the HEROES Act was going to cost $3 trillion. The HEALS Act now is more on the Republican side, and it's looking at about a $1 trillion bill, where the CARES Act was in the middle at $2.2 million. So again, this is not a political podcast. I'm not going down that road, but what I want to do is just go through here and break down some of the differences, some of the things that are going to be the same, and what you can expect. All right, so stimulus check during CARES Act. We said $1,200 to single filers, making 75,000 or under, and then it phases out. That is the same for the HEROES and HEALS Act. So if you are somebody who received a $1,200 check or a $2,400 check, or maybe you received $2,400 based on those numbers right there, it's going to be the same with the HEALS Act. So that's good news. You're going to expect to get the same. Now, here's where it differed a little bit. So if you remember, I just mentioned the CARES Act was $500 per your dependent age 16 or younger. There's this gray area. It left out basically everybody from 17 to 24 just got completely left out, because if they were claimed as dependents, they didn't get a stimulus check, but their parents who claimed them couldn't get any money for them being a dependent. So it was kind of this weird gray area. So what happened with the HEROES Act that was proposed back in May by the House of Representatives, they wanted to get rid of the $500, and they wanted there to be $1,200 additional per dependent, up to a maximum of 3 dependents. Again, this is why it was a $3 trillion bill. This and some other things. So the Republicans in the Senate came back and said, we don't like this. So they are saying, we want to do $500 for all dependents, no age limit. Now, there is an age limit, because you can't be a dependent over age 19 if you're not in school, or age 24 if you're a student. So just make it real simple. If you claim someone on your taxes as a dependent, they have to be either 19 or younger, or if they're a student, they can be 24 or younger. So that takes care of that gray area. So again, earlier when I was saying you might be getting more money, the answer is yes, you are going to get more money, because if this goes through like it said it's going to next week, you are going to receive $500 for all the families out there that had students that were 17 to 24 they claimed as dependent, they didn't get any money for. Now there's going to be $500 for dependent, and there's no cap on that. Okay, so that is another win, I would say, when it comes to getting your check or getting your stimulus check. Okay, all right. So we're going to talk about unemployment next, but first, let me ask you this. Okay, are you tired of how you're treated in a world of big banks? I mean, have you ever gone into the bank and you just feel like, I don't really enjoy the way I was treated? Look, I was the same way. And 10 years ago, I made the move from one of the big banks to a local credit union, and I've never looked back. You see, at a big bank, you are merely a customer inside a for-profit institution. Okay, generally speaking, they usually don't really care about you. At least that's how I felt. But at a credit union, you are a member inside a nonprofit institution. So let me ask you this. If you could get all the same perks as the bank offers, okay, all the same perks, all the same protection, but this time you get all the same perks with high-level customer service and a personalized attention to you, to your family, to your business, wouldn't you rather be at a credit union versus a big bank? So I live here in Arizona, and I have been a proud member of 1AZ Credit Union for the past 10 years. So all of our personal banking, all of our business banking, it's done locally at 1AZ Credit Union. And I highly recommend, if you live in Arizona, check out 1AZ Credit Union, make the move there from a big bank to more of a personalized service where you get the attention that you need and you deserve. If you're not in Arizona, what I would do is I'd recommend asking some friends, family members, what's the best credit union, and going off their advice and testing it out. Test the waters of the credit union. I promise you, I have yet to meet anybody that's went from a credit union back to a bank. It's the number one move I've made with our finances in a long time, was making that move. All right, so back to unemployment that we were talking about here. With our unemployment benefits, so if you remember with the CARES Act, it was $600 per week in addition to the state benefits, okay? So whatever your state was. So the problem was, it was great on the surface, right? It was great on the surface because, I mean, people got laid off unexpectedly, and then we got this money that was pumped in as income so they could survive, and I thought it was great. The only problem is, and I'm sure everybody listening or watching this has heard of this story before, is it was hard for businesses to get their employees to come back to work because they were making more money on unemployment than they were collecting, or than they were at work. So you look at this going, I know somebody who owns a restaurant, and he said, Chris, I'm having trouble getting my employees to come back to work because they're making more money at home doing nothing. Why would they want to come back to work? So it definitely, in a way, de-incentivized people to want to go back to work. And so this expires July 31st. So with the HEROES Act, HEROES Act said, okay, we want to take the exact same thing, the $600 per week, in addition to the state benefits. We want to extend that all the way to January 2021. And then if you're a gig worker, a freelancer, or you're an Uber driver or something like that, we want to take that and extend it all the way to March 2021. Again, this is why the HEROES Act costs $3 trillion. So On the other side of that, the Senate came in and said, okay, here's what we propose. So it's less. So instead of $600 per week, in addition to state benefits, it goes down to $200 per week. So from $600 to $200, $600 to $200 a week. It does that all the way through the end of September. And then October through December, it's 70% of lost wages up to, so just think of this, up to $500 per week, okay, including your state benefits. So it definitely is a lot less, right? It definitely is a lot less. So if you look at it here, though, what does it really look like? What is $600 per week? So if you look at it, I did some math here. So let's just say that you make $10 an hour, okay? So if you're a $10 an hour employee and you get the benefit of $600 per week, okay, and you do this, it comes out to be about $15 an hour if you worked a 40-hour week. So again, if you're a $10 an hour employee, you actually got a pay raise. So again, if you're working your butt off for $10 an hour and then you get $600 a week in unemployment, what's the incentive to go back to work when you're making more money, right? You're making more money at home than you are at work. In addition, though, however, you've made like $30 an hour, then it's definitely a pay cut. So it was 150% increase in income if you were a $10 an hour employee. And so I think that was kind of the thing that these lawmakers are looking at is, okay, it was great on the surface, but how do we get people to go back to work? You know, businesses were reopening, but the problem is they couldn't completely open because they couldn't find workers because they were making more money on unemployment. Again, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that. That's just what was going on. So again, with the HEALS Act, the benefit goes from $600 per week in addition to state benefits down to $200 per week. Okay. And that lasts all the way through the end of September. Then October, from October to December of this year, it is 70% of lost wages up to $500 per week. Okay. So, and that would go through, again, to the end of the year. All right. So let's see here. Anything else that was, okay. Another big thing here. Okay. So I mentioned what the CARES Act stood for. I mentioned what the HEROES Act stood for. So the HEALS Act, HEALS, stands for Health, Economic Assistance, Liability Protection, and Schools Act. Okay, so as a parent, this one kind of raised my eyebrows a little bit because there's the school was involved in this. So with the CARES Act, the school wasn't part of it, right? We were talking about shutting down schools then. It was the end of the year, but both the HEROES Act and the HEALS Act had a lot to do with schools. Okay, so let me break down the differences between these two really quick. So the HEROES Act, the one that the House passed, or the one that proposed, not passed, but proposed back in May, was this. It was $58 billion for grades K through 12, and $42 billion was going to go to higher education. So we're looking at, I don't know, about $110 billion in funding to education. Okay. Now on the HEALS Act, again, remember I said earlier, usually on the Democratic side, they spend a little bit more money. On the Republican side, they're spending a little bit less money, more conservative. Well, this was just kind of the opposite. So it was $70 billion instead of $58 billion. It was $70 billion to the K through 12 schools that open for in-person classes. Okay, this is what they're proposing. $29 billion for higher education. $1 billion to the Bureau of Indian Education, and then $5 billion given to the state for state discretion. So each state would get a $5 billion stimulus for school reopening. Okay. Also, what I've noticed here is with the CARES Act and the HEROES Act, there was nothing talked about with the coronavirus testing. Okay. The HEALS Act adds an additional $16 billion for coronavirus testing. Okay. So kind of in a nutshell here, what we're looking at is the CARES Act was a $2.2 trillion stimulus package that was passed in March. Okay, it's already done with. So if you should have already received your check if you were eligible for that. And that went on. That was part of the Paycheck Protection Program. That was part of the unemployment benefits. All of that. Then in May, the House Representatives proposed the HEROES Act. It stalled in the Senate, and then on Monday, the Senate, which is Republican, the majority is Republicans, they proposed the HEALS Act at $1 trillion. So the HEROES Act was $3 trillion. The HEALS Act is $1 trillion. A lot of it's the same. The addition from the HEALS Act to the CARES Act is $500 more per dependent up to age 24 if you're a student. So there's no gray area there. It lessens the unemployment benefit by quite a bit, and then it injects some money into schools and into testing for coronavirus. So that is some of the big changes that are coming at you. And so with that said, let's see here. Anything else I think that we should know? I think we're good. I'm going through all my notes here. I don't want to miss anything. Yep, I think we're good here. So last thing I want to ask you is this. So we just talked about money coming in the form of your stimulus check, right? So the majority of people listening and watching this are going to get money put inside their checking account, inside their bank account, or a check delivered in the mail, or however it's going to be, but money's coming your way, okay? So with that money is, do you want to be smart with it? Do you want to save more money? And do you want to pay off debt faster? Absolutely you do. Of course you do, right? No one wants to not be able to save money or remain in debt forever. And did you know that 75% of people right now, they don't have a simple plan? They live paycheck to paycheck. They don't have a budget for the money in their life. So therefore, just recently, I put together a free how to budget mini course, and I want you to have it. It's completely free. It's 2 simple videos. I'm going to walk you step by step on how to create a budget. And then I'm even going to give you the budgeting templates that you can start using today. Okay. So head on over to moneypeach.com. We put it on our homepage. You'll see a button right there that pops up. It's a free mini course. You can take that right now. Okay. I put it together for you to take. I want you to have something in place so when the stimulus check does hit your checking account, you have a plan for every dollar. Zig Ziglar said it best. He says, if you aim at nothing, you will hit it every time, okay? So with that said, head over to moneypeach.com, look for our budgeting tool. You'll see it all over our site. It is a free mini course, 2 videos long where I walk you step by step on how to use it. You're gonna get the tools, you're gonna get the resources to take with you, the templates to print off or to use on your computer or however you wanna use it. They're free, I want you to have it. The number one or the biggest raise you will ever receive in your lifetime is when you start living on a plan. Instead of waiting for life and money to happen to you, you happen to your life and money. With that said, head on over to moneypeach.com/session 140. All the show notes, all the links, anything that we talked about in today's episode will be there. So that's moneypeach.com/session 140. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you guys next week, same time, same place with another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. Take care.